Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dhriti Athri, and you're watching Skyline. Every single day, the world changes. Sometimes it is because of a war, sometimes because of politics, and sometimes a decision taken thousands of kilometers away ends up hurting you. Basically, the price that you pay, the security of your family, or even the future of your career. Well, today's show is packed with stories that prove exactly that. These aren't any isolated headlines. Together, they tell you a much bigger story about how geopolitics, immigration, and law enforcement are reshaping lives across America. So, without wasting another second, let's get straight to our first story tonight. Thousands of kilometers away, the Russian-Ukraine war, it continues to rage. Missiles are flying, drones are attacking ports, and ships are changing their routes. At first glance, this may seem like another conflict unfolding in Europe, but the reality is very different. The impact of the war is now being felt inside the United States itself. The American state of Indiana has declared an emergency, and the reason goes far beyond its own border. State officials say that disruption caused by Russia-Ukraine conflict have contributed to rising fuel prices, forcing government to extend emergency measures including the suspension of state gasoline taxes. And yes, there's another reminder that in today's interconnected world, a war in one region can quickly affect households on the other side of the planet. So, you know what exactly changed? According to the officials, the latest wave of maritime drone attacks in the Black Sea and around the Kerch Strait has once again disrupted important shipping routes. These waterways plays an important role in moving energy supplies across international markets. And at the very same time, Canada's Alberta oil sands, another important source of crude oil, has also been hit by devastating wildfire, reducing production and adding even more pressure to global energy supplies. Now, when supply becomes uncertain, markets react almost immediately. Oil prices rise, transportation becomes more expensive, fuel distributors pay more, and eventually, ordinary people end up paying higher prices every single time they visit a petrol station. And that's exactly why Indiana has decided to continue emergency measures instead of allowing fuel taxes to return to normal level. This story also highlights, by the way, something much bigger here. Modern wars are no longer limited to battlefields. A drone strike near an oil terminal, a damaged shipping route, or an attack on critical infrastructure can create economic consequences that travel across continents within days. For families already struggling with inflation, even a small increase in fuel prices affect daily lives. Transportation costs rise, fuel becomes more expensive, businesses spend more on logistics, and slowly the impact reaches every household. One conflict thousands of miles away, but its economic shockwaves are now reaching American consumers. But yes, while one crisis is affecting Americans through rising fuel prices, another controversy is directly affecting the families of those who wear the American military uniform. Serving in the US military is often described as one of the highest forms of public service. Every day, thousands of American soldiers put on the uniform, knowingly that they could be deployed anywhere in the world to protect their country. But now a different kind of battle is unfolding. And not on the battlefield, but at home. A new investigation has sparked a political storm after reports claim that more than 50 immediate relatives of active duty US military personnel have been detained since Mr. Trump returned to the office. Some family members have already been deported, while others remain in federal immigration custody as their legal cases continue. Report this one. It has immediately triggered a heated national debate, by the way. Supporters of the administration, they argue that immigration laws must apply equally to everyone. They say having a relative serving in the military, it does not automatically provide legal protection from immigration enforcement. But critics, they see the issue very differently. They argue that when the spouse or parent of a serving soldier is detained or deported, the consequences extend far beyond immigration law. Military families often deal with long deployment, uncertainty, and emotional stress. Adding immigration enforcement into that equation, they say it could damage troop morale and place additional pressure on service members who are expected to focus on national security. Many military advocacy groups, they argue that a soldier deployed overseas should not have to worry about whether their spouse or their parents are facing detention proceedings back home. They believe that this could affect morale and military readiness at a time when service members are expected to remain focused on their duties. The Department of Homeland Security, however, has defended its actions, maintaining that immigration laws are enforced without any special exemption simply because somebody has a family member serving in the uniform. Well, the controversy, it has once again placed immigration policy at the center of America's political conversation. It also raises a broader question, by the way. Where should governments draw the line between enforcing immigration law and protecting military families who sacrifice for the country every single day? The debate is only expected to grow louder and louder in the coming weeks. And yes, while immigration is dividing political opinion, another investigation has exposed an entirely different problem. One that allegedly stole millions of dollars meant for some of America's most vulnerable citizens. Healthcare fraud is often described as a white-collar crime. There are no dramatic police chases, no bank robberies, no explosions. But investigators say that the damage, it could be just as devastating because the money being stolen belongs to taxpayers and it is meant to care for the elderly, the sick and the most vulnerable people in the society. Now the US Department of Justice has announced one of its latest major crackdown on healthcare fraud. Federal authorities have charged 19 people in Pennsylvania in connection with alleged schemes involving millions of dollars in fraud, Medicare and Medicaid claims. At the same time, the Justice Department has expanded its Northeast Healthcare Fraud Strike Force into Philadelphia, giving investigators additional resources to pressure healthcare fraud across the region. Well, officials say that this isn't just about one company or one fraud claim. It is about an entire network of alleged schemes involving home healthcare agencies, employees, caregivers, and Medicaid recipients. And yes, some of the allegations are extraordinary here. According to prosecutors, certain individuals claim that they were providing home healthcare services while they were actually in prison. Others allegedly billed the government while they were hospitalized, traveling overseas, driving for ride-share companies, or even attending court hearing. In another shocking allegation, investigators claim that one defendant submitted claims showing that they worked more than 24 hours in a single day, not once but hundreds of times. Others allegedly billed for providing care to multiple patients simultaneously, collecting more than $1 million through fraud claims. Officials say that these weren't accounting mistakes, they cannot be. They were carefully organized schemes designed to exploit taxpayers-funded healthcare programs. The Justice Department says that the expansion of healthcare fraud strike force, it sends a clear message. Whether the fraud happens inside a corporate office, through fake paperwork, or inside a home healthcare agency, federal investigators say that they will continue pursuing those responsible. Authorities also say that protecting Medicare and Medicaid isn't just about saving government's money. It is about ensuring that people who genuinely need healthcare, they receive the support that these programs were created to provide. Because every dollar lost to a fraud, it is ultimately a dollar taken away from the patient care. But while the Justice Department investigates financial crime on the ground, another investigation has now moved into the skies above Washington, involving Marine One, Donald Trump, and a passenger aircraft, which, by the way, is our next story. Well, a routine presidential helicopter flight, it has now turned into a subject of a federal aviation investigation. This particular week, authorities began examining an incident involving Marine One, the helicopter carrying the US President, Mr. Donald Trump, after reports suggest that it came much closer to commercial passenger aircraft than aviation safety rules normally allow to. According to reports, the incident took place in the skies above Washington, D.C., while Marine One it was making its way to Andrews Air Force Base, where President Trump was scheduled to board Air Force One for his trip to California. According to reports published by the New York Times and also the Wall Street Journal, communication between pilots and air traffic controllers may have become unclear during the flight, resulting in what aviation experts call a loss of separation. Simple words, two aircrafts came closer to each other than a minimum safety distance recommended under aviation regulation. Now, while thankfully there was no collision and no emergency landing, the whole incident is serious enough for the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, to launch an official investigation. The Federal Aviation authorities have now confirmed that air traffic controllers were communicating with both Marine One crew and commercial aircraft throughout the incident. The White House has also responded, saying that President Trump, he was never in danger and that Marine One operated by some of the most experienced military pilots in the world. Officials insist that there was never any immediate threat to President's safety, but investigators are now reviewing exactly what happened and whether additional safety measures may be required in near future. Well, this investigation, it comes at a time when aviation safety around Washington that remains under intense scrutiny. Earlier, the deadly collision involving a commercial airliner and a US Army Black Hawk helicopter shocked the entire nation, prompting regulators to tighten flight procedures around the capital. And that is why even an incident where no one was injured is now being examined with extraordinary seriousness. In aviation, authorities often say the goal is not just to investigate accident, but to investigate close call because they become accident. But yes, while one investigation is unfolding over the skies of Washington, another development, it is raising questions thousands of kilometers away in West Asia, where fresh military movement, they are fueling speculation about America's next move against Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, fresh satellite images and videos from Israel have triggered intense discussion among military analysts across the world. Reason? A significant number of US aerial refueling aircraft have been spotted at Ramon Air Base in southern Israel. Within hours, social media was flooded with claims that the US was shifting its military assets out of the Gulf and preparing for a much larger confrontation with Iran. But how much is that actually true? Let's figure that out. Well, open source images confirm that several KC-135 Stratotankers and KC-46 Pegasus refueling aircraft are currently positioned at Bremen Airport. These aircraft may not carry missiles or bombs, but they play one of the most important roles in modern warfare. They allow fighter jets and bombers to remain in the air for a much longer period of time. In fact, they help them mid-air. Now, these increases the flexibility of the aircraft to remain in the air for a longer period of time. Military experts say that deploying these aircraft to Israel provides the US with greater operational flexibility at a time of rising tension across West Asia. If American or allied aircraft need to conduct extended mission, aerial refueling becomes a crucial advantage. However, analysts also question that many of the dramatic claims circulating online remain unverified. There is currently no official confirmation that the United States has withdrawn almost all of its military assets from the Gulf bases or shifted its entire regional strategy towards Israel. Even so, the timing of the development, it has attracted attention. The West Asia that remains on the edge following renewed tension involving Iran, attacks on regional shipping routes, and concerns over possible military escalation. Every visible military moment, it is now being closely watched by governments, intelligence agencies, and financial markets alike. Because in today's geopolitical environment, even the repositioning of support aircraft can trigger speculation about what might happen next. Well, for now, the deployment appears to be a precautionary measure designed to strengthen the operational readiness rather than evidence of an imminent military campaign. But in the region where tensions can escalate very quickly. Even strategic move, it is being interpreted through the lens of much larger confrontation. And yes, while the US is strengthening its military posture, one of Washington's closest allies in the Gulf is sending a very different message to the White House. Saudi Arabia has long been one of America's closest strategic partners in the West Asia. But according to the recent reports, the kingdom is now urging President Donald Trump to avoid taking military action that could push the region into a much larger conflict with Iran. And guess what? At the center of this discussion is Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who reportedly expressed concern that any new American strike could destabilize the Gulf and threaten Saudi Arabia's long-term economic ambition. According to reports, Crown Prince Mr. Salman, he raised these concerns during conversation with the US officials as Washington considered possible responses to recent Iranian actions, including attacks linked to regional tension and disruption to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. For Saudi Arabia, the concern goes far beyond military strategy. While the kingdom is investing hundreds of billions of dollars into Vision 2030, an ambitious plan designed to reduce its dependence on oil and transform the country into a global center for tourism, investment, tech, and innovation. Security experts believe that another major regional war could place that entire vision into pressure. Saudi officials have learned from years of conflict in neighboring Yemen that military operations often create long-term instability rather than quick solutions. Former US defense officials also argue that repeated military campaigns have failed to completely eliminate threats from groups like Houthis, despite years of sustained operation. Now, if we see from Riyadh's perspective here, another large-scale conflict with Iran, it could damage investors' confidence, slow economic reforms, and create fresh security risks across the Gulf. Diplomatic efforts are continuing alongside these concerns, though. Iran's foreign minister, he has been holding discussions with regional governments, while countries such as Qatar and Oman continue working to reduce tension and find diplomatic solutions. One of the key priorities remain ensuring safety, navigating the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important energy shipping route. Any disruption there, it could once again send oil prices soaring and affect economies across the globe. Saudi Arabia's message, very clear. While regional security remains important, preserving stability has now become equally critical. Because for countries investing in long-term economic transformation, peace is not just diplomatic objective. It has now become an economic uncertainty. But yes, while diplomacy continues behind closed doors, reports from Washington now claims that there may have been sharp disagreements inside the Trump administration itself over America's military preparedness, which, by the way, is definitely our next story. Questions about America's military preparedness are once again making headlines. This time, the controversy isn't coming from the battlefield. It is coming from inside Washington itself. A new report claims that President Donald Trump, he confronted Defense Secretary Mr. Pete Hegseth after learning about alleged shortages of critical missiles and air defense interceptors. According to the report, Mr. Trump believed that the issue had already been resolved and was reportedly caught off guard when he was told the shortages were still affecting America's military readiness. The report, which first was published by the Washington Post, claims the discussion took place during high-level meeting at Camp David. It suggests the president demanded answers after discovering that key weapon stockpiles had not been replenished despite the earlier assurances. These shortages are particularly significant. Why? Because air defense interceptors and precision-guided missiles play a vital role in protecting military bases, defending allies, and responding quickly during any regional conflict. However, the whole story has been strongly rejected by the administration. The White House has dismissed the report as 100% fake news, while the Pentagon insists that Defense Secretary Mr. Hegseth, he never misled the president about America's defense inventories. Officials maintain that US military capabilities remain fully prepared to respond to any threat and that the published claims do not accurately reflect internal discussions. Even though both the ends have presented completely different versions of the event, the report has once again raised a larger question. At a time when tensions with Iran remain high and conflicts continue across multiple regions, does the US have enough military resources to sustain another prolonged conflict? Well, defense experts say that modern warfare depends not only on advanced weapons but also on maintaining adequate stockpile for extended operation. Whether the report is accurate or not, it has once again brought America's defense preparedness into the public spotlight. But yes, while questions are being raised about military readiness, another major development in West Asia is shifting attention from missiles to the market, with Strait of Hormuz once again becoming the center of global attention. Sometimes the biggest global story isn't about a missile being launched or a government failing. Sometimes it is about a shipping route reopening. And today, that's exactly what's happening in one of the most important waterways in the world, the Strait of Hormuz. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, after weeks of rising tension, reports suggest that the United States has made tactical adjustments to certain Iranian oil sanctions as part of a broader diplomatic efforts aimed at restoring commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Following the high-level negotiations involving regional mediators, both the sides have moved to a structured transit arrangements designed to reduce risk for commercial vessels that are passing through the strategic water. Well, can you know the significance here? The significance of this move, it cannot be overstated. Nearly one-fifth of the world's crude oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Any disruption over there, it immediately attracts a global energy market. Insurance costs for oil tankers rise, shipping companies increase the charges, fuel becomes more expensive, and inflammatory pressure that begins to spread across economies around the globe. The financial markets react almost immediately as reports of the sanctions adjustment and possible transit framework emerged. Brent crude prices dropped sharply. Lower oil prices brought immediate relief to the investors who had feared another energy shock. Businesses dependent on transportation, aviation, manufacturing, and logistics all stand to benefit if oil price remains stable. Well, for international investors and businesses, this development carries a lot of importance. Why? Because lower fuel costs can reduce operating expenses, improve profit margin, erase inflammatory pressure that has affected consumers for months. At the same time, analysts question that the situation remains fragile. Any breakthrough in negotiations or renewed attack on commercial ships could quickly reverse these gains and send the market back into another period of uncertainty. Well, the message for global investors is simple. Keep a close watch on oil prices, inflation figures, and official announcement from Washington and Tehran. Because in today's interconnected economy, a diplomatic breakthrough in West Asia, it can influence everything from airline ticket price to stock market thousands of kilometers away. And yes, while Washington appears to be easing tension in one part of the globe, another geopolitical battle is intensifying in Asia Pacific, where China has unveiled fresh measures targeting the United States. Well, the world's two largest economies may be preparing for a summit next month, but that has not stopped tension from rising. Just weeks before an unexpected meeting between Chinese President Mr. Xi Jinping and US President Mr. Donald Trump, Beijing has announced a fresh round of retaliatory measures against American companies, adding another chapter to the growing technology and trade rivalry between the two superpowers. China's Ministry of Commerce has imposed sanctions on several American companies, tightening export control on drones and related technologies designed for the US. And the announced additional restriction affecting business cooperation with certain US firms. Chinese officials say that these steps are a direct response to recent American action involving restriction placed on Chinese companies, tech products, and imports over national security and human rights concern. Well, the latest measures show the competition between Washington and Beijing. It is no longer limited to tariffs alone. it has now expanded into artificial intelligence, advanced robotics, drones, semiconductor, telecommunication, and supply chain. Both nations are increasingly using economic tools, export control, and corporate sanctions just as part of a broader strategic competition. But despite all these fresh restrictions, diplomatic engagement continues. Officials from both the nations have recently held virtual trade discussion while preparations are reportedly underway for a summit between President Trump and President Xi. Analysts say that both governments are trying to prevent economic competition from turning into uncontrolled confrontation. But at the same time, neither side appears willing to back down on issues involving tech, national security, or strategic influence. In the meantime, for businesses and investors, this means uncertainty is likely to continue. Well, companies operating across both markets may face new compliance requirements, supply chain investment, and additional regulatory hurdles. The rivalry between the US and China no longer just about trade. It is shaping the future of global tech, manufacturing, and investment with international commerce. And that's all for today's edition of Skyline. Ladies and gentlemen, from an energy emergency in the US to immigration controversy involving military families, from one of America's biggest healthcare fraud crackdowns to aviation safety investigations, from rising tension in West Asia to diplomacy over Strait of Hormuz, and finally to the growing strategic rivalry between US and China. Today's headlines once again remind us that the world is more connected than ever before. A decision taken in Washington, Beijing, Moscow, Tehran, it does not remain confined within national borders. It influences economies, markets, fuel prices, businesses, and the lives of millions of people across the globe. I'm Dhruti Yatri, this was Skyline, and I will see you in the next episode.